speaking about the process of transformation, and I used a story about a butterfly. Now, I don't know if you had the butterfly story here last month, and if you did, that's okay because, like all good stories, it bears retelling. But once there was a little boy, a little bit bigger than that little girl, who was walking in the woods with his grandma. And you know how little boys walk with their heads down and they're looking at everything and picking up everything and rock and leaf and whatever. And all of a sudden, the little boy saw a caterpillar. And he was like, Grandma, Grandma, will you help me take it home? Will you help me take it home? I want to watch it turn into a butterfly. So being a good grandma, she bent down and picked up the caterpillar and gently placed it in her grandson's hands and went home. They put it in a jar with lots of leaves and grass and sticks and put a lid on the jar with some holes in it. And he brought it to a shelf in his bedroom. And he sat and he looked at it and thought, I wonder when that's going to turn into a butterfly. And he didn't have to wait too long before the caterpillar spun itself a cocoon. And he was so excited, he called his grandma. He said, Grandma, we got a cocoon. And then he waited, and he waited, and it seemed like he waited a whole lifetime. Every morning he'd look at that jar. But one morning when he looked, there was a little tiny hole in the bottom of the cocoon. He was so excited. And then he could see there was some kind of struggle going on inside that cocoon. He watched, and the hole didn't seem to be getting much bigger, and he started worrying about the butterfly. Would it ever come out? Did it need help? What could he do? And all of a sudden he thought, oh, I can help. And he went and got his mom's scissors, and he cut off the bottom of the cocoon. And out fell the butterfly. But it was a weird looking butterfly. It had lots and lots of fluid. It was this big squishy body, and its wings were all wrinkled and misshapen. Because what the little boy didn't know, and what I didn't know either, was that it's in the process of the struggle, that very last part, and the butterfly has to push itself out of that small hole, that the fluid from its body gets pushed out into its wings. That's what enables them to spread out. That's what enables the butterfly to fly. And in all of his compassion and all of his wanting to help that butterfly avoid the struggle, the little boy had crippled him. We are all responsible for our own transformation. It's part of the struggle that gets us to where we are. But how many of you have ever loved somebody? How many of you have watched someone that you love struggle and you've wanted to take that away? And it usually doesn't work out very well. But that's not to say that we don't have a part to play in alleviating struggle. That's not to say that we leave those who are struggling alone. Our part to play comes into play in this next story about interdependence that kind of, I think, is a springboard from transformation. Any of you know Henry Nouwen? Heard that name? He may have been a Catholic priest, I don't remember for sure, but he was a theologian and a very, very deep thinker, and he wrote a lot of books. And the story I'm about to tell you came out of his book called The Wounded Healer. There was a woman whose only child had died, and she thought that the grief was going to kill her. She could not bear to think of one more minute without her child. She didn't know what to do. So she went to the village wise woman and she said, this grief is going to kill me. You need to help me. And the wise woman said, I can help you. But before I can, you need to bring me a spoon. You need to bring me a spoon from a household that has not known sorrow. And as soon as you do that, I will help you. Well, the woman was very confused, but she thought, well, what the heck, a spoon? I'll go get a spoon. So she went into the village and she knocked on the first door. And an old woman came to the door and she explained, I'm going to die of grief and I just need a spoon from a household who hasn't known sorrow. And the old woman said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. But I've been married for 62 years to the best man on earth, and he died about a month ago. I have so much sorrow. But why don't you come in and we can have a cup of tea together?" So she went into the home and she sat with the woman and they shared their tea and probably a little of their own stories. And then she said, I gotta go find a house that hasn't known sorrow. So she went to the next house and knocked on the door, and a kind of middle-aged man answered, and she told him her story, and he said, "Oh, I wish I could help you, I really do, but my job was downsized. I got 3 kids that are ready to go into college, bing, 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 and I don't even know how we're going to pay the mortgage this month. I'm really sorry, but I can't help you. But you look a little thirsty. Why don't you come in and have a glass of water with me?" So she did. And then she left, and she went, every door she went, someone had something, and she traveled far beyond her village looking for that spoon. But one day she woke up and she realized that her first thought was not that her child had died. And then she realized that, oh yes, there was sorrow, but it wasn't the crushing kind anymore. It was kind of an ache that she realized would never go away, but it was better. It was better. She used her wounds and turned them into healing, not only for herself, but I bet you at every door that she went in. That is our part, to help one another realize that in whatever struggle we're involved, we're not alone. We're not alone. I can't fix it for you. You can't fix it for me. But we can have hope that we're not alone. There's a story that comes, it's been told by a bunch of, or attributed to a bunch of different African tribes. The tribe I know it from is called the Dagara tribe. And they talk about when a woman realizes she's pregnant. She sits, she listens. She spends time with that growing belly, and she listens. And one day she hears a song faintly, and she starts to hum along with that song. And she memorizes that song, and she starts singing it to her belly, because it's the song of her child. And as it gets close to the time that she's going to deliver that child, she teaches it to the midwife, because she wants that child to hear her song as soon as she's born. And she thinks, well, if I can't do it, if I'm too crazed with pain or whatever, someone has to sing it. So the midwife learns the song, and when the child is born, the first thing the child hears is her song. And that song is sung to that child throughout her lifetime as she's growing up, important days. But quite possibly the most important time that child might hear her song is when she's really screwed up, when she's done something that's harmful or hurtful, either to herself or to her tribe. The elders of the tribe are called together, and the family of that now grown child is called together. And together, that group sings to her her song, because they realize it's not punishment that she needs for screwing up, for doing something wrong. It's a reminder of who she is, because she wouldn't have done something hurtful if she remembered who she was. We are interdependent on one another for that hope, for that recognition, for that identity. But we're not just interdependent on one another as people. We're interdependent with all of creation. Uh-huh. You go, girl. How many of you have a pet? How many of you have a dog? That's who I identify with. Jean Wentz isn't here today, is she? Dang, I would love to hear her gerbil story or guinea pig story. But anyway, um, those of you who have a pet or have access to an animal in your life, you know what it's like to have someone across the limitations of speech and whatever, to have a connection. I tell you, when I am sad and I'm like, ugh, I just, ugh, my dog will hop up on my lap. They have no concept of personal space. Right in my face. Lick, 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 lick. Or sit there quietly. Or when they know that I need a kick in the butt to get off my pity party pot, okay, let's go for a walk. And my dogs, I think, are a little bit dependent on me for their hope too. I respond to that. I once got into a lot of trouble. Well, it wasn't a lot of trouble. I once got into an altercation with a professor of mine in a theology class because I said to her, dogs have souls. And she looked at me and said, you need to retract that. Animals do not have souls. Only human beings have souls. And I said, oh no. I said, you must not know a dog, first of all, but dogs have souls. And she said to me, you're a heretic. And you are bringing dishonor to the God who created you. But have you ever sat and looked into your dog's eyes? It's a bottomless pool of love and wisdom and soul. I also experience that kind of connection, and I bet you do too, when I take the time to sit outside. We have lots of turkeys and deer in our neighborhood. We also have lots of trees, and I'm not good at plants, so I don't know what they are, but they're pretty. And I sit out there with them, and I feel like, you know, when you talk about part of the interconnected web, like it just feels good just to be, because I don't need to do anything and I don't need to prove who I am. And sometimes I talk to the trees, sometimes I talk to the flowers, but that sense that we are all in this together. When I water a plant outside, I always have a little conversation and tell them I hope that they like the fertilizer and, you know, whatever. But we are part of and responsible for one another's growth. Now, I don't often extend that to bugs or things I don't understand. And as I get older, I'm realizing the danger of being closed off to things you don't understand. So I try to always I'm a reader, and I like to read junk, but I also try to always be reading something that teaches me something, or that gives me a new perspective on things I don't understand. And the book I'm reading right now is called The Comfort of Crows by Margaret Renkl. But I can't tell you this story because her words are so much better than mine, so I'm going to ask your indulgence as I read you this little bit of story from Margaret's book. It's about bugs. A gray spider has set up an elaborate web at my writing table in the family room. She is not an orb weaver like E.B. White's famous Charlotte. This spider's web is a multi-layered hammock-like construction strung between the leaves of the orchid I got for Mother's Day and anchored by silken strands to the window frame and back and to an African violet and a desk lamp on either side. I tell you, if that was in my house, it would be gone. I don't like to disturb my new desk mate, so I don't often water the plants. The orchid, a pink and purple confection with wide, glossy green leaves, needs hardly any water. It's perfectly suited for this task. The violet has seen better days. The spider's web is decorated with insect carcasses, 3 houseflies, countless fruit flies, and 1 desiccated former spider. A better housekeeper might be distressed about sharing space with a spider, but I love her. Breaking news is a term that has no meaning anymore. It's all as broken as it ever gets. But the spider in my family room goes about her bloody business in the perfect order of things, unaware of the chaos unfolding beyond the window. An insect blunders into her web and she eats it. Then she repairs the web and waits. In times of fear and grief, it's tempting to assign human meaning to natural systems. How many people have told me that a loved one has returned to reassure them in the form of a mockingbird singing at midnight outside a silent house, or a swallowtail butterfly lighting on a freshly carved tombstone? I'm guilty. But when my world has lost its still center, we grasp for any reminder that it is nevertheless spinning exactly as it must. But my spider, for of course she is my spider now, one of those anchor lines has attached itself to my heart. She's more than a symbol of the enduring natural order. She's more even than merely herself, performing the same motions her kind have performed for hundreds of millions of years. She's also the linchpin of a flourishing miniature ecosystem. A few feet away from the spider's orchid bower at the end of my writing table sits a worm composter. That would never be in my house either. It is populated by several thousand red wigglers who eat up our garbage. Every few days, I open the top of the composter and dump in a bunch of coffee grounds, banana peels, and vegetable parings, plus some shredded newspaper and junk mail. And the worms go to work making compost. When it's ready several weeks later, I take the compost outside and spread it in the pollinator garden. In winter, when the insects are sleeping beneath fallen leaves and in the hollow stems of last year's flowers, the worm composter is a simple contraption populated almost exclusively by earthworms. But in summer, other creatures find their way into it through open windows and doors, and they settle in. Whenever I lift the top of the composter in summertime, a cloud of fruit flies rises into the air. Beyond the window, where the spider has set up shop, there are two hummingbird feeders. One is the usual kind filled with sugar water, and the other is a newfangled contraption filled with rotting fruit. Fruit flies lay their eggs on the fruit, and when the eggs hatch and the new flies exit through slits in the feeder, the ruby-throated hummingbirds in my yard catch them and feed them to their babies. The process works fine with ordinary overripe bananas, but it works faster with pre-primed fruit from the composter. And thus do many of the fruit flies that begin their life in my family room make it to Central America transformed into a young hummingbird's feathers and bones. Meanwhile, any fruit flies that escape in the transfer from worm composter to hummingbird feeder are dispatched before they even reach my kitchen by the spider on my work table. This kind of circular structure is what I love best about nature, even its most violent reality. Outdoors, my spider's web might have been destroyed by hummingbirds, who build their nests partly out of spider silk, and the spider herself might have been fed to the baby hummingbirds. Everything goes to some crucial use. Nothing goes to waste. It makes sense. And things that make sense are particularly reassuring when the human world has turned itself upside down. There is only so much information a person can take in during an emergency. There is only so much active resistance a person can engage in without succumbing to despair. Sometimes a body needs to rest. I have friends who pray more now, friends who drink more now, friends who have read more novels or watched more television, friends who have taken up yoga or needlework or gardening. I have friends who wanted to adopt a kitten and then found out that so many people had the same idea they had to get on a waiting list for rescue kittens. I have tried some of these distractions myself, but I am taking my greatest comfort in a plastic bin full of earthworms, turning garbage into food for flowers. In one spider crouching among 100 silken strands that gleam like silver in the sunlight, in a cloud of fruit flies on their way to becoming a baby hummingbird's wings. I'm going to try to look at the things that I don't understand or don't feel like I want to have any relationship with in a different way, because that is hope. That cycle is hope. I also know of hope I've learned to take from the spirit world. And this is something that stretched my belief system quite a bit. So those of you who know my story know that I lost a son to suicide when he was 23, 20 years ago. I can't even believe that when I say it. And I was a very good, somewhat heretical Catholic up until that point in time. And then I realized that so much of what I thought I believed or knew just didn't make sense anymore. So it all kind of fell apart for me. And then I read somewhere, another Catholic priest, imagine that, by the name of Marcus Borg, talked about belief not as attesting to the validity or truth of something, like not factualness, but the word belief, he says, is rooted for the words to give one's heart to. So now when I think about belief, I not only think about what may be factual, because sometimes it's, I believe, factual as well, but it's more like, what can I give my heart to? And so one of the things I was trying to figure out in my new reality was, where was Matt? Do I believe in heaven? You know, what do and I just couldn't hold on to much of anything. And then, gosh, probably 10 or 15 years after he died, I started volunteering for a local hospice in their grief support, because I figured I could take some of the stuff I'd learned, kind of like the wounded healer thing. And there was a woman, actually there was a family that came to the group, and they had lost a teenage son to a very, very rapid illness. And he was the oldest of their 4 kids, and that family was just floundering. And one day when she came to one of our meetings, there was an entire change about her. I mean, she was like animated. And I said, what's going on? And she said, you would not believe. You would not believe. You would not give your heart to. You would not believe. But someone told me about this medium, and we went. And I have no doubt in my mind that I was communicating with my son, and he's fine. And my skeptical, rash, judgmental self went, and she said, you should go. Well, it took her 2 years to convince me that I should go. And when I went to this woman, honestly, I was so ashamed of myself afterwards, because I went with this huge chip on my shoulder, and I was like, yeah, don't you dare ask me any questions where I would give you any kind of information that you can manipulate me. Don't you dare try to make me believe something that isn't. Don't you hurt me any more than I'm already hurt. And she didn't. She said, well, I see someone who would like me to give you some information. He would like to tell you something. And she said, and he wants you to know for sure that it's him. So here's what he says. He's really glad you got his tattoo. I have a tattoo on my shoulder right here. He said that he thought that was really cool. I thought, well, I got long sleeves on. She doesn't know I have a tattoo. I'm because she said, the first thing she said to me was, oh, he put himself in the spirit world. And I'm thinking, you read his obituary? I'm not having any of this. Then she said, the tattoo. Oh. Then she said, but what he really wants you to know is his friend that got the tattoo the same time. He said, Matt's friend got this tattoo, except he got it elaborate. And he had Matt's birth date and his death date tattooed on, but he got the death date wrong. And I didn't have the heart to tell him when he came over and he was so excited and showed me this tattoo. I didn't have the heart to tell him, oh, Jason, you screwed up. So, oh, Jason, that's cool. So through the medium, Matt said to me, you guys okay with a little colorful language? Matt said to me, you make sure that you tell Jason that was fucking hilarious and that I love him very much. That opened up, and then he went on to say, Matt was nothing if not musical. And he went on to say that he gets to use his music every day, welcoming other people who are coming into the spirit world, especially young people who've come there suddenly. And the only thing that would make him happier is if we would not be sad. And then he said, you know what? When it's your time I'm going to be the one who meets you, but don't worry, it's not going to be anytime soon. I believe with all my heart that not only is this that we can see real, but what we can't see is real as well. And I want to tell you a funny little, well, it wasn't funny. On the way here, my little side story, because now this goes into opening up my appreciation for the people who came before me. On my way here, this clock was built somewhere between 1886 and 1894. It was my great-grandmother's wedding present. My great-grandmother wound it. I can see it on the clock shelf. My great-grandmother wound it every day for about 50 years. When she died, my grandma took it over and wound it every day after that for about 35 maybe. Then it came to me. And I wind this clock about once a week with this funky little key. And every time I wind the clock, I feel my grandma's hands touching here, or my great-grandma's hands touching here. And when I get it started again, okay, so I have to tell you a very funny story of the Interdependence of Hope. Because this clock has become my touchstone for hope. This is my tangible symbol of hope, and I think everyone should have one. So if you don't have one, find one. Find one you can look at, touch, feel. As I was driving here today, this has a pretty little attachment on the top that's not here right now. It's in my car. As I was driving here today, it was sitting on the seat next to me. I had to stop suddenly. I forgot the clock was there. It went flying. The bottom came off. The the pendulum that goes back and forth came off. The top came off. And I came in here frantic. And there was Francesca, who said, let me get a pliers. And there was Ron, who said, well, let me see if I can help. They put the bottom back on. I reattached the pendulum. This thing can get glued back on. And my tangible symbol of hope that for a minute, when it was on the floor and all I could hear, I thought the glass broke. It just sounded terrible. And I thought, I have let the grandmothers down. But I have not. I have not. They just gave me another piece of the interdependence of hope. Our world is full of so much, I don't need to tell you, everywhere. There's not a whole lot of hopeful signs, but we make them. We do them. We are them. And there's a little tiny song that I sing to myself in my head mostly, but from back when I was more Catholic, and I'm going to sing you just a little bit of it, and I would love it if those of you who recognize it would join me. We are many parts, we are all one body, and the gifts we have, we are given to share. Yes, may the spirit of love make us one indeed, one the love that we share, one our hope in despair, one the wound